Happy holidays, everybody. This is my favorite time of the year. I love the holidays, and we're drawing close to what has been a momentous 2023. And this has become my favorite tradition. This is actually my favorite thing I get to do all year long. Work wise, personal wise, this is it. It's the roundtable end of year discussion with all of the crew from the show: Brian Clark, Blair Henley, Michelle Yu, and Nick McCarvel. It's first of all, it's great to see all of you. Happy holidays to one and all. And thank you guys for making this work. It really is a Christmas treat. Now, just in full disclosure for the audience, we are taping this on Friday morning, and this will drop as a holiday present probably Monday night or Tuesday morning. So it might not be under the tree on Monday for you, but it'll be right around there. So if Rafa Nadal like retires in the next couple of days, I'll make an adaptation. I'll make an adjustment on that. Or if Roger Federer says he's coming back and we're not talking about it, that's why. So lots to get to, but I feel, and we talked about this just before we started rolling, this is the official podcast of the U.S. Open. So I think the best way to start is, what were our favorite moments from this year's tournament? And there were a lot to choose from. And sorry, my eye just caught Michelle, so I'm going to lead off with you, Michelle. Sorry to make you the first person in class to stand up, but what were your favorite moments from this?
I feel like you just spotted me as like the bad kid in class, and you saw me not paying attention, and that now you're putting me on the spotlight. But I am paying attention because,
No,
Marc,
not
I'm
at
so
all.
excited to be here. Thank you so much. And you're right, there were so many great US Open moments. We could be here for hours talking about it. But the one storyline that really caught my eye, I mean, this hit home to me, as a mom, Caroline Wozniacki coming back. 10
Yes,
mothers were
yes,
playing at the US Open this year, but here she was, a two-time US Open finalist, coming back, first Grand Slam for her in over 3 years, makes it to the fourth round, and she hadn't played many matches before that. She had announced that she was coming back to the game just this summer, and then to see her in tip-top condition with her children there and her
I know.
husband, David Lee, former member of the Knicks, former NBA player, yada, 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 supporting her. Amazing to see her come back, and she did it with such grace. And Caroline is just a delight to watch, and it's just wonderful to see a mom on tour come back like that and just really kill it.
It was the tournament of moms, and I think she was one of the brightest stars of that. And I think in that fourth round, didn't she lose to Coco? Do I have
She
that
did.
right? Yeah, and
Yeah, she
obviously
took a
there's
set off Coco.
yeah, I mean that's a pretty game fight right there. You're losing to the woman who ends up winning the whole tournament, and that could be somebody's greatest story. In fact, I'll go to Nick McCarvel. Um, what was your or what were your favorite moments? What was your favorite moment from the Open this year?
Yeah, Mark, thanks for having us. I echo, I think, everyone's sentiment. We love being a part of this greater podcast family. Yeah, Michelle, I love, God, the Wozniacki thing was so crazy this US Open, and I'm excited to see what she's going to do in 2024. I mean, Coco Gauff to me was the story of the US Open, and I sometimes I think we all like try to pick the secondary, what are the other storylines? Ben Shelton, that breakout run was huge. I'll leave that to someone else to really dig into, but it just has to be Coco. And, the way that she fought through, let's go back to that first round match against Laura Siegemund, where, man, there was a lot of aggro on the tennis court, wasn't there? We
Yes,
started
yes,
out
there
the
was. Yeah,
US Open in dramatic fashion with Michelle Obama, sitting courtside, and Coco Gauff willing herself. And I think we look at the great champions of our sport and the way that they're able to find their best tennis when they need it. And Coco did that several times. I mean, Michelle brings up the Wozniacki match. I think of the Elisa Mertens match. And
yeah,
then obviously, how weird was that semifinal against Muchova when, they stopped the match for, what was it, an hour and a half, guys? I mean,
yeah.
I was courtside for radio. I've never seen something like that. People around me were angry. They're like, it's just one guy. I'm like, he's glued to the stadium. Like, we have
Got to figure
to,
this out. Yeah, we got to
that
figure
was,
this out before we keep playing.
remember
Yeah.
that happened in real life, everyone. Like, that was so insane. But Coco, and I actually remember looking from behind where I was sitting courtside, and Brad Gilbert's all pumped up and he's furious at the USTA officials, what's going on. And Coco just was within herself that whole time. And I think she called out, what was it? She was almost down a break in the second set to Sabalenka, to go down a set and a break. And she hit, some sort of winner that sort of really, she felt turned the tide, got the crowd in it. And that's just what she did all tournament long. She did it all summer long. DC, Cincinnati. Yeah, first American teen since Serena in '99 to win the US Open. There's just so many superlatives, but I loved watching her sort of come into her own this summer at 19 years young. And I think that first round loss in Wimbledon, she chose to take a risk and to change things. And I think that's tough to do for any athlete because they love patterns, they love
Oh, sure.
safety. And I think that she took a chance and she's a Grand Slam champ. And let's see what she's going to do in 2024 as well.
And that's so well said, Nick.
Was that
And
cheating, guys, that I took Coco
no,
Gauff? I mean, I don't know.
no, because I mean, at least from my chair, because and I was guilty of this for so long, over the last couple of years. When is she going to take the next level? She made it to the finals of the French Open. That's great, but when's she going to win a slam? Putting this ridiculous pressure on somebody who's still a kid, but she plays with the poise and the talent of somebody, much beyond her years. And so to see her finally break through and win that Grand Slam, and see finally, I mean, she's only 19, that to me, and for Americans, as you said, the first American team to win since Serena, it was a magical moment. So no, that might be.
If you want a feel good moment for the holiday, go back to match point, championship point. She falls on the crowd reaction was insane. And if you need to feel like, how are you going to attack 2024? Listen to her trophy acceptance speech and pour some gasoline on your own fire.
I like that. I like that. Blair, what about you? What was your top moment from the tournament this year?
I have several, and I am guilty of looking at this from my personal lens because I feel like, millions watched it around the world, and there are certain things that you can pick up whether or not you're on site. But these are the things that really hit me in the feels one way or another.
Sure.
The first, Coco was definitely on my list, but I loved Jenny Brady coming back, making it to the third round.
Yes.
Missed her, and I really hope that she is healthy for the entirety of 2024. Ons being Ons, she had to battle. She wasn't feeling well at the US Open, but she is just such a delight at all times, whether you see her in the hallway or to fans, even when no one's watching. It's just, it doesn't get old for me to watch her do what she does and just be this person that is so magnetic in every way. I loved Barbora Krejcikova, my friend, coming to hang out in the production booth in Ash and watch me do something. I was a little nervous because I had not, it's not like I have a long history of doing voice work in gigantic stadiums, but she wanted to come see what it was all about. I loved having her up there, and she stayed for an entire night session and watched tennis with me and gave me
Blair,
her
I'm going to be rude and interrupt. Can we just give Blair Henley a big round of applause for being the first female voice of God at the U.S. Open on Arthur Ashe Stadium? That's all. Sorry, Blair. Carry on.
Voice of Goddess, and just you nailed it. I've talked to you about that a bunch of times, but yes, so well put. Thank you for bringing that up, Michelle. Congratulations. I should have brought that up in your intro. I'm sorry, Blair, but yes, you crushed it. It was great to see.
Absolutely not. I appreciate you guys very much. And, hopefully I did the role justice, but I was glad to have a guest in the booth. And then Dasha Kazakina promoting her YouTube channel mid pre-match interview will forever be one of my best. And again, I look at this as an interviewer myself. Sure. I'm jealous of Renee Stubbs that moment happened with Renee standing in front of her. I'm like, oh man, I would have loved for that to be me. I don't even know if I would have been able to keep it together because it was done so flawlessly with the look to the camera. Guys, I don't know how the match is going to go, but check out my YouTube channel.
It was the best. Blair was the best use exciting. It was the best use of a pre-match interview ever.
Ever. Yeah. Ever.
Literally ever. Yes, exactly. No, absolutely loved it. Also selfish, shameless plug, our fan-facing media day this year, Nick, that we did together, I thought was something really unique, and it was our second year doing it, and it grew, and it was, how often as a fan do you get to sit there and listen to Novak Djokovic talk for 10 minutes, like in a chair, relaxed? It wasn't in a, it's not in a typical press conference setting. Anyway, I just thought that was a lot of fun. Great opportunity for fans. The honeydew machine, the frozen honeydew machine, got fixed about 10 days into the tournament. And I don't know if I'm allowed to say out loud that I consumed one or two of those, but props to the people in charge of fixing the frozen honeydews machine. If you've never had one, highly recommend. And my last one, right, well,
I've
Marc,
got next year. It's a goal. Yeah, I like having goals for 2024. Yeah, I got to try one.
And my last one goes to the superstars, Jimmy Butler in particular. But I mean, the list of celebs that came out to watch tennis, and again, there's power in that when people are like, oh, Leonardo DiCaprio thinks it's cool to go to the U.S. Open. I mean, you name it. The list of stars that came out to watch was so long. The Obamas, of course. I mean, it goes on, and I think that's really cool for the game of tennis. And that's all I got. I said that's all I got after I listed like 8 things, but there you go.
That's all right. It's the
Brian
holidays.
Clark. Good luck.
Yeah. All right, Brian. Yeah.
All right, Brian.
Brian Clark.
I'll actually start by following up what Blair just said. Everything Blair said is what makes the U.S. Open so special, that it's such an event. It's not about, we talk about from the tennis perspective and how great it is to watch these superstars, whether they're emerging or whether they're established and coming back. But to see, like you said, Blair, Jimmy Butler, Leonardo DiCaprio, Aaron Rodgers, right before he got hurt at the U.S. Open. Rodgers was there for like a whole day. That just all adds to the buzz, whether it's the buzz of you get after drinking a couple of honeydeuces or the buzz of eating good food. It's just that special event. But for the tennis, Nick, you definitely stole, or you didn't steal, but the story of the U.S. Open was Coco Gauff. I mean, to break through, and like you said, Marc, she's still just 19, but to win the title the way she did, coming back from a set down against Sabalenka. And Nick, you were on the money with how strange that semifinal was. I think the most composed and with it person on the entire grounds as that was going on was Coco Gauff, where so many players to get thrown out of their rhythm like that would be unable to recover. They'd be upset. They'd be angry. She just kind of shrugged her shoulders. She shut it down for a little bit, and she got right back onto the court, resumed business. So that's the story. But the story of tennis, I think, over the last decade, now we're seeing it emerge, is Novak Djokovic. I mean, the guy, I've said this to Marc a few times in the regular podcast. I think the conversation is beginning to shift with Novak from, greatest tennis player of all time to where he ranks in the list of greatest athletes of all time. We talked about superlatives with Coco, everything she did, but with Djokovic, I'd always said a favorite fact of mine was it was so strange that he had only won the U.S. Open 3 times. It just seems so low compared to what he had done in Australia. Well, that's over. Now he's won it 4 times. It feels like, even though he's going to be turning 37 before the next U.S. Open, he could win it 4 more times if he wants. The way he's been energized by this younger group of players, this group of exciting players, the way he, it's just become the elder statesman of the game. The way he is dominated now. He's put together, I would say, 3 or 4 of like the all-time best seasons for a man.
Oh, yeah.
And he's doing this now at 36 years old. He just put another one in the bag. So for me, Djokovic winning his 4th U.S. Open, that overshadows, the great tournaments of the Americans like Ben Shelton, and the fact that we go into 2024 with 10 American men in the top 10. This is still Novak's tour, and that's where we are going into the new year.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with everything all of you said. But to focus with what you just talked about, Brian, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I think it's like 4 times that Novak has won 3 out of the 4 Grand Slams in a year. I mean, it's just remarkable how close he's come to equaling Rod Laver and being the only other man to win the Grand Slam. And it's just, especially coming into this tournament, we thought, well, this is going to be the year of Carlos. You saw him win at Wimbledon, and then that match in Cincinnati. And what Novak was able to do was just brilliant. I'm not going to disagree with any of your top moments because I just think they were all great. But one I will add, and this was off the court, but it was just the general, and because I'm a history guy, but it was the general celebration of 50 years of equal pay and the celebration of Billie, who I just don't think we can praise her enough. However much we're praising and saying how amazing she has been, not just for sports, but for society in general and for this country. It's just great when we step aside and we truly honor everything that she's done. So I love that. I also love, I'm just going to throw this one out there. There was a great match between Zverev and Sinner. There was like a 5-setter. I can't remember if it was in the quarterfinals, the 4th round. And that was just a really cool match. That was one of my favorite matches to watch, but there we go. But I want to pick up on the Novak talk because he really has elevated himself. I mean, a year ago it was the GOAT discussion. Well, is it Roger? Is it Rafa? Is it Novak? And I think he has clearly put his stamp on that. That conversation's over. Now, people can still pick their favorites, say, well, I just like Rafa better, or I like Roger better. But I think, a dispassionate view of the evidence, you have to say that this guy's the best ever. Nick, what do you make of him? And where he's at, as Brian said, he's going to be 37 and he's still playing with this fire in his eye as if he's 21, still trying to prove himself.
Yeah, I feel like he totally agree. I feel like he's more motivated than ever, which is scary for the rest of the field.
I
And I
know.
also think, you look at he just did that piece on 60 Minutes. John Wertheim, our colleague, did a great job with that in Belgrade,
Yes. Yes.
talking Novak, getting inside his brain, which Novak has said it's about my brain, my mind, and my body. And I think that trilogy is what has made him like Brian says, entering into that space of greatest athlete of all time. I think that also, over the last couple of years, obviously he faced a lot of challenges by choice of not getting vaccinated. He was limited in his travel. He couldn't come to the US for a couple of years, etc. But I think now they've really figured out his schedule, so he knows exactly how much he needs to play. And, until pick your generation, right? You've got sort of the Dimitrov, Raonic generation that we've seen gone through, and you've got this Zverev, Medvedev, Tsitsipas generation, which has certainly made their mark and will continue to do so. But now we've got this next generation in Rune, Shelton, Sinner, scored those 2 wins over him to end the season. But until you're put into those scenarios where you're actually able to meet Novak in the moment, he's just going to continue to go about being the best. And
The best.
2024, it's not, I don't think it's insane for him to say that he wants to win all 4 slams and he wants the CV. The only thing missing on his CV is Olympic gold. And it's best of 3 sets and it's on clay, which I think adds a little bit of risk, both those aspects, when Paris comes to be for the second time this summer. But there's a great possibility for the Golden Slam. And I think it's all just about him staying healthy, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Because the motivation is definitely not a factor with him. He still is very eager to get out and win every time he's out there. And so, yeah, it's helped. But I know he's been nicked up here and there, but man, he just seems inhuman. He's just like Gumby. He's super flexible and he's just always on the ball. Michelle, your thoughts on Djokovic and what do you expect from him in the coming year?
It's so funny that listening to Nick, say all these things, especially that 60 Minutes interview. What I got out of Novak Djokovic this year is that you kind of saw how his mind works. He lost that Wimbledon final to Carlos Alcaraz, but then after that Cincinnati Masters 1000 final, he's a completely different player now. He is now embracing the role as being a villain. He doesn't care anymore if he's liked or not. In fact, when he plays in front of a big crowd, he loves the fact that people are booing against him because you know what? That motivates him to win. So with the Australian Open coming up, which by the way, he's already won 10 times, he is the clear favorite for that.
Amazing.
And
it's amazing.
It's incredible. And I just think he's going to get better because he has this motivation that the younger guys are coming after him. He suffered a couple of losses, one including to Yannick Sinner later this past fall. And I think he knows that, the players are there at his level, but they're not there at his level mentally. In fact, now after that Cincinnati, I've said this to anyone that will listen. After that Cincinnati final, Novak Djokovic's mentality, his tenacity, his toughness is now on a whole other planet compared to the others. And I think with that, he's going to take that and run with it with his mind, body, and brain and all that. And just go and win the Golden Slam possibly.
Wow. If he does that, I mean, you're on just another different stratosphere. And that Cincinnati match, and I'm cheating ahead of it when we talk about our the biggest moments from 2023. That Cincinnati final with Carlos that's one of the greatest matches I've ever seen. Now, Blair, were you in Cincinnati for that?
I was not there for the actual final. I think Michelle maybe was
Michelle,
there.
were you
I was there. Yes,
were there.
I was there. I watched it. It was an incredible, I didn't feel like I was working. I felt like a fan, just like biting my nails. And, it was just, it had everything It had drama. It had just artistry. It had amazing points. I mean, it was one of the best matches, if not the best match of the whole year. And I know I'm talking big because that Wimbledon final between Alcaraz and Djokovic was pretty good, but it was really epic.
Since he was right there, and that's not a Grand Slam. And again, for somebody who's won as much as Novak has and everything he's accomplished, I think he wanted that match in Cincinnati more than anything he's ever won in his life. I mean, he was banged up, and you saw when he won, he collapsed on the court, and it was like a genuine. It wasn't like, oh, I'm doing this for the cameras and all that. I think he was just totally drained and exalted with that victory. Well, Blair, we talked a lot about Novak. We'll get to him in a little bit, but for the women's side of it, I mean, we've talked about Coco Gauff and the great run she had, but Iga Swiatek finds a way to be the number one seed at the end of the year for the second year in a row. She wins her third French Open. Aryna Sabalenka really broke through this year. She almost won a couple of slams. She did win in Australia. How do you break out the women's side, and what's your favorite thing from the year?
Before I get to that, can I add a 17th thing to my list of favorite things about the US Open?
Sure, of course.
It relates to our last topic, but Novak hanging up on Ben, I could not get enough of that. I love, as Michelle said, Novak in his villain era is my jam. And I love Ben, but I love Ben because Ben makes you feel something one way or another. And he made Novak feel something one way or another. And that is what we love. And that makes it exciting. Anyway, so that was 17 on my list. I'll let you know if I have any more.
Okay, before you get to the women, I do want to say, because this popped in my head, the only other player that I can think of off the top of my head who is as comfortable being the villain in hostile environments is Jimmy Arias. I think Jimmy always loved it. Like, he doesn't care. Like, I think that fueled Jimmy so much, and he's told me some of the great Davis Cup stories and playing in front of hostile crowds. And yeah, but there's a certain mentality of like, I can't wait to shut everyone up by holding up the trophy at the end of this thing. All right, so I gabbed enough there. Yeah.
Sorry. Anyway, I wish one day I would have the guts to, just like conduct my haters in an arena. And who gets the chance to do that?
I know.
But anyway, moving on to the women. And so you were just looking for things that stood out in terms of storylines on the women's side?
Is it Iga being number one again? Is it Coco for winning for the first time? Is it Sabalenka for breaking through? Is it, Svitolina, for coming back? There's a lot of good stories out there, but what was your top one?
For me, it's kind of all of those things. And the fact that depending on the week, you could have another really cool storyline emerging on the women's side. I think that is what makes women's tennis right now pretty great. Obviously, yes, we need the superstars. That piece is also key. But I think you have all these people in line for superstardom. Obviously, here in the US, I think Coco is probably leading the charge there. But Sabalenka is spending a lot of time in the US also, and she says whatever pops into her head, which as an interviewer we love. You know you're going to hear exactly what she's thinking.
Yeah. No filter.
As I think a true tennis fan can watch Iga and just be amazed at the athleticism, the fact that, again, in that last bit of the season, she started coming into the net more. So, you hear Billie Jean King saying champions adjust, and that's what we've seen with Iga, with Sinner, for instance, is another one on the men's side. But these players here, like, they're already so good. What are they going to do? But it's those incremental changes that can make that can pay such dividends in the year to come.
No, absolutely. Well, Brian, let me get to you. Iga, had another great year, as we talked about all these women, but Iga ends the year as number one. And there's some people that are coming back, for Australia and for the year in 2024. Naomi Osaka, four-time Grand Slam champion. Angelique Kerber is coming back. Wozniacki is going to have more matches under her and feel more confident with her training and just how successful she was on the tour last year. How do you see Iga navigating through sort of a more crowded field now?
Smoothly? Is that the right answer? I mean, based on what we've seen from her and what we've seen from the group that's coming back, I think there's no reason to think that she's not going to be right back up there, well poised to defend this world number one ranking. I mean, she is the best player in the world right now. Let's look at who's coming back. It's great that Naomi Osaka is coming back. We know that her best work's been on hard courts, her 4 major titles, 2 in Australia, 2 here at the U.S. Open. But what do we expect? Do we think Osaka's going to walk back on tour and win the Australian Open? That'd be a great story, but I think we're a little ways away from calling that a reality. Maybe we'll see if she's firing by the time the U.S. Open rolls around. Look at Kerber. She's one of the more popular players, one of the more exciting players on tour. But, her game against Swiatek's game, I think you take Iga, just the way that she's able to pretty much diffuse everybody she goes up against. And that includes Wozniacki in that conversation. We were talking about people coming back. I know Blair mentioned Jenny Brady before. It was great to see her back at the U.S. Open, and we hope she stays healthy. But based on what we've seen on tour, Iga doesn't get bothered by many people. I think one of the great stories of last year for me on the women's side was Aryna Sabalenka finally breaking through, because like Blair said, she's one of the most certainly exciting. She's the player when she's on court, you can't take your eyes off of her. And in some ways, when she's off the court, because she, as Blair said, is not shy about speaking her mind and whatever is on her mind. She's got that kind of explosive game that's fun to watch. She was so, this is not why you become a fan or not a fan of a player, but the way she handled that U.S. Open loss to Goff was really, I thought, impressive, because the crowd was certainly not on her side, and she was very honest about that fact. And she didn't look like she was holding a grudge against anybody. So I think there's a lot of good things are happening right now in the women's game. And yeah, the thing we always talk about is that need for filling the superstar vacuum, that Serena Sharapova vacuum. And I think, if Osaka is back healthy, happy, and committed to tennis, she stepped into that void. Sabalenka has the personality to do it. There was some scrutiny, fair or unfair. You be the judge on Swiatek last year. Is she the kind of box office player you can build around? Well, if she keeps winning and playing the way she is, her personality is different than others. But yeah, she's got that kind of box office attraction because people like somebody who plays the way she plays. So I think women's tennis, if it were a stock, it would be trending up. That's how I would say.
No, I agree. Nick, what do you make of Osaka coming back? What do you expect from her? I don't want to place too much burden on her, even though she's won there twice. She, as Brian said, she's supremely talented on hard court. She's been off for a little while. She obviously, the last time we were really talking about her was with a lot of her issues with, the media and just really dealing with happiness on and off the court. And I think I've been clear about this. I've said it a number of times. I'd love to see her play because she's a brilliant player, but more importantly, I just wanted to have like peace and happiness in her life. What do you think? What do you make of her comeback, and what are you looking for from her?
Yeah, I mean, I actually think that the expectations are pretty high. I think that she, from what I understand, from what I've seen, she's in really great shape. Wim Fasset's back with her. He's been a huge influence on so many different, especially female careers. I agree with you, Mark. I think it's so important for her to have that happiness. I think at the end it got pretty tough, right? She made the choices that she did at the French Open in 2021, but I remember, just all of those challenges for her. She's still Naomi, like she's still quirky. She's still going to always walk to the beat of her own drum. I think that maybe she's more comfortable doing that now at 24. I did have a little email exchange with her. I did the feature for the Australian Open program, and she basically was just like, it's all about me. I want to be happy. I want to do this for my fans. Obviously, she's got her kid now. She's excited to bring her baby out on tour. And then it's going to be about meeting the moment. But I actually think, Brian, I appreciate like tempering expectations. I don't disagree with that, but I actually think that the camp feels like she can be really successful pretty soon out of the gates. Brisbane's a place that she's really comfortable with. When you look at the Australian summer, it's so short, right? So if she gets a couple match wins under her belt and then doesn't have to play, say, a Swiatek or someone right away at the AO, I think we could see her deep in week 2. I don't know if other people disagree, but I don't think she would do all of this work to just come back and be mediocre.
Yeah, just come back in and wave hands. Oh, it's just neat to be out here. No, when you're a champion, you get the heart of a champion. I think, when you get on the court, you're there to win. Michelle, what are your thoughts on Naomi and her comeback? What are you expecting? Michelle.
Michelle's muted her. I mean, Michelle, you've done this to yourself. You've silenced yourself, Michelle.
Yeah, I just want to make it clear to the listeners. I have
I'm-
not put her in a corner.
I'm actually still shocked that Michelle has bounced back from Marc early on in the podcast. You said maybe Rafa wouldn't play in 2024. And Michelle's a pretty big Rafa super fan. So I'm shocked that she's bounced back.
All right. Well,
Michelle, are you okay?
she's sorting this out. That's all right. We're going to get to you on this question, Michelle. But let me pivot to Blair and your thoughts on.
Wait,
on
I'm
Michelle's...
here.
Oh, there she goes. Didn't put her in timeout.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's okay.
I think all the listeners know what I'm I just showed how much of a dinosaur I am when it comes to modern technology that I can't even unmute my phone and it took like 30 seconds. So I really apologize for that.
It's okay. It's okay.
I am excited for Naomi Osaka's return, but there's one player I do want to talk about really quickly who I think people have overlooked her accomplishments this year, and I'm excited to see what she's going to do next year, and that's Jessica Pegula. Jessica Pegula had a great year. She won her first WTA 1000 title in Montreal, and she was also the #1 doubles player as well. And she reached the WTA final, and she even joked after she lost to Iga that, she went to the Iga bakery because she lost 1-0. Yeah. And there was nothing she could do about that. But, I am really looking forward to seeing her truly break through at the majors. She made 2 quarterfinal appearances in the majors this year, but I really want to see her push through and, make it to that semi, make it to that final, and hopefully winning it just like her good friend Coco Gauff. I think we're almost over the hump that people are, people have stopped calling her the Buffalo Bills daughter, which I really, I despise that. I think she's really shown that she's made a name for herself in the game of tennis. So I really want to see her do well and hope that she will do well. And I think that she's shown this year that she has potential to really have that breakthrough. But with all that being said, I do hope Osaka comes back and makes a wave as well.
Yeah, no, it's going to be fun to see. There are a lot of fun storylines coming up, certainly early going of 2024. And Brian and Nick, you touched on that name, the guy from Spain, Rafa Nadal. He's coming back. I honestly don't know what to expect. Blair, I've talked to you about Rafa 1,000 times. I love his game. I love him on and off the court. I want him to keep playing just very selfishly. Like I wanted Roger to keep playing just because I love seeing him out there. I think Rafa's done a smart thing and sort of tamp back expectations. Like, look, I don't know what to expect when I get out there. I'm excited to be out there and play again. What are you expecting? I mean, he could win it all, or he could go out early. What do you think's going to happen with him?
If the practice videos are any indicator, which I look at practice videos at your own risk, but he seems to be healthy. And I think that's going to be the #1 variable that, defines whether or not this comeback is quote unquote successful. And what do you count as success for Rafa Nadal at this point in his career? That's another big question. But he seems to be moving well. And as we've seen historically from Rafa, he won't come back unless he's feeling very close to 100%. He's 97% isn't going to cut it. So you figure if he is indeed coming back, he's feeling pretty good. And I wouldn't put anything past Rafa at this point. I think he'll be, I think come Roland Garros, he's going to be striking fear into people's hearts as he generally does and has for the past 15 years. So I expect big things if he's healthy.
How many French Open titles has he won? Is it 35, 40? I can't even remember. I can't count that high. But Blair, let me follow up with this. And anyone can weigh in on this once I'm done asking Blair. But how does this impact Carlos Alcaraz? Like, he had by all standards, he had a great year. He wins Wimbledon, but probably in a lot of people's minds as well, kind of a down year. Like they expected more from him. They expected really to sort of take charge of the men's side of the tour. And before Novak said, wait a minute, remember me? I'm the greatest player ever. Now, if Rafa comes back on any level of success, does that help? Does that hurt? Like Carlos, is the competitive spirit to be like, okay, I'm going to raise my game to challenge my countrymen here? Or how do you think that impacts him as the young player and successful player that he's been?
I don't think at all. I think he'd be happy to see Rafa because he likes Rafa. But in terms of his tennis, I don't think it affects his tennis at all. But I do think it's going to be a question mark, though, in terms of whether or not Carlos is healthy. in 2024. He definitely showed some cracks in the armor at the end of 2023. It was interesting talking to Goran Ivanisevic at the US Open. I did a Q&A with him in a sponsor suite. And when he was talking about the next generation, he said, Carlos is the only one, and he said it in the most polite way that he could, who is special. And then we see at the end of the year that, oh wait, Sinner might be also special. And so again, you know that Carlos has that special quality to him, that thing that, you know, could be yet another generational talent. But I do kind of think Sinner turned things on its head at the end of the year, knowing that there could be another player who maybe not strikes fear into the heart of Novak Djokovic, but who Novak is having to really think hard to go out there and get a win against. So we'll see.
Yeah, no, Sinner definitely planted his flag at the end of the year and said, I know everybody's been overlooking me because there's so many talented players at the top of things. Brian, I remember talking to you about Yannick at the City Open here in Washington, D.C. years ago, and he was already on your radar, hadn't really been on my radar. What do you make of the end of the year he had, and what do you think he's got in store for him in the coming year?
I thought it was a fantastic way to end the year, and it would have been even better if he'd been able to beat Djokovic twice, but that's a very tall order to pull off. I think he's now, you know, there's that process with a young player, and Alcaraz emerging, I think, spoiled everybody and caused us to sort of overlook the natural process. Where Sinner, you know, turned 22 right before the U.S. Open started, and he was being treated almost already as an afterthought. Like, oh, here's the guy. He was the next big thing. He was Alcaraz before Alcaraz. Maybe the ceiling wasn't as high, but he was the one that was being hyped, and we knew all about him. But yeah, there is that process that comes with the tour. And now the fact that he's going into this season with really a full head of steam from the way he ended last year is encouraging. And I think we're also seeing, just to go back to what you guys were just talking about, the first real adversity for Carlos Alcaraz. And for me, that's one of the most fascinating subplots to watch in the early first quarter, let's say, of the upcoming season, is what do we see from Carlos Alcaraz? Because he beats Djokovic in this epic Wimbledon final, and he did not win a title for the rest of the year. And again, he's a young guy who's now achieving these unknown, unconceivable heights of being world number one, being the Wimbledon champion. But then, you know, did Novak kind of break him in that Cincinnati final? He would not be the first and probably not the last for that to have happened. Do I think that permanently derailed his career? Absolutely not. But it's the first real check of adversity, I think, for Alcaraz. And I'm really fascinated to see how he handles that. And if I had to guess, I think the answer would be well.
Yeah. But that, you're right. I think that's the first real speed bump he's had in his career. And I think it did take him some time to process that. But I think with any great champion, any great player, you're going to have a setback, and it's how you respond to that that is the measure of how great you are on the court. I want to shift.
Well, Mark, really fast.
Sure.
It will be interesting to see for Alcaraz. He won't have Juan Carlos Ferrero in Australia. They just announced this week that Ferrero himself had surgery, some sort of knee issue. So it must have been bad enough that Ferrero didn't feel like he could make that trip. So that'll be an interesting sort of ripple. Obviously, that team is much bigger than JCF, but for Carlitos to have a slam, go into a slam, this is his Australian Open debut, or he played there a couple of years ago. He didn't play there last year. But
yeah, I think it was a couple years ago. Yeah.
So to not have Ferrero in his corner will be big. It'll be interesting to see how he handles that.
And now that you said that, Nick, that makes sense to me, because I got a message from Carlos Alcaraz, and I haven't listened to the voicemail yet. Obviously, he wants me to come to Australia to be in his box. So I think everybody understands that.
Wait,
but you know, Mark, I'm going to add one more thing. I feel that Yannick Sinner, ever since this U.S. Open moment of his, where he finally met the Carota boys, after that moment, he really took off, because I think the Carota. And by the way, I'm going to give a pat on my own back for that, because I'm actually responsible for the coordination of that meetup, which was really fun. But at the same time, he received the 2023, one of the ATP awards that Yannick Sinner received was Fan Favorite Awards. I mean, nobody has 4 carats following them around the world. It's the greatest thing ever.
Love the carrot suits. Love the carrot suits.
Hey, Michelle, I thought you were good. I thought you were going to stir the pot a little bit, mentioning the fact that Darren Cahill, Sinner's coach, won Coach of the Year, and we know that Novak Not like that.
Yeah, he did not. He in fact said, "What does it take, Goran? Does it take 4 out of 4 Grand Slams for you to get Coach of the Year?" So it's going to be an interesting 2024, and I'm all here for it.
I
But
can't wait for
sorry,
that.
when Nick was talking about JCF not being in Australia, was it conjured a memory for me? Was it Conchita Martinez who got on FaceTime and propped up the phone in the player box for Garbine Muguruza when she was coaching? Am I misremembering this? Guys, it's going to be 2024. We get Juan Carlos, get his face on a monitor in that
right.
box. Somebody make it happen.
We can wire that up, right? I'll make some phone calls.
Somebody should be this is right up Craig Tiley's alley.
I mean, I'll be in Australia. You want me to take a bobblehead of Juan Carlos Ferrero into the Alcaraz box and deliver it and have the whole team look at me like I'm insane.
Nick, did you just bury the lead? Do you own a Juan Carlos Ferrero bobblehead? Is that
yes, that's the bigger story.
You know, I own a Billie Jean King bobblehead, obviously. So I guess I could try to tape Juan Carlos's face.
By the way, I will point this out because we're getting off the rails, and this is my favorite part of stuff. I'm just going to point out that behind Nick is one of the coolest posters you'll ever see. It's an Olympic poster from Lake Placid, 1980. I think I'm the only person in this room who was alive or at least old enough to remember watching those games. I mean, is that right? I remember seeing the U.S. men's team, win the hockey. Like that is the greatest Olympics
Miracle
of all time
on Ice, baby.
Yeah. I still remember that. I think I was 11 years old. So that's how old I am because I'm 1,000 years old now.
And just before we fully exit, I'll do an Olympic throw-in before we exit. Carlos, is that both he and Rafa have talked about playing doubles together at the Olympics, which would just be incredible.
Oh, yes, please. That's the only Christmas present I want is those guys playing doubles together. All right. I got a couple more things I want to get with you guys. I want best moments from 2023. And I want predictions for 2024. One prediction. But before I get to those things, and we'll go with Brian here. Your assessment of the Americans this year and moving forward. There are a lot of great things with Eubanks, with Shelton, obviously with Coco. We didn't see as much as we wanted to from probably Francis, to name just one out of a few American players. But it feels like we're moving that line in the right direction. The way it's been going the last few years, I feel confident. I feel good about the Americans' play. I'd still love to see an American man win a Grand Slam. I don't know when that's going to happen, but what's your take on the status of the American tennis?
Like we said before about women's tennis, it's a stock going up. And I think on the men's side, it only gets better. We've got 10 in the top 10 right now in the ATP rankings. Alex Mickelson just cracked into the top 10 after he had a nice run in Jeddah at the Next Gen Finals. He's just 19 years old from Southern California. His name looks like Michelson. It's Mickelson, pronounced like the golfer. So that's the newest excitement. But excitement was the word, whether it was Chris Eubanks first in Miami, one of the more respected, well-liked players among his peers. And then to do what he did in Miami, it was a nice, that it looked like it came out of nowhere. But then when you got to Wimbledon and he gets to the quarterfinals, it was really the culmination of about a year of real solid hard work. He kind of recommitted himself to the sport. He had done really well, some cameo appearances, moonlighting at Tennis Channel. And he's thinking, do I want to keep grinding it out here week after week, or do I maybe want to transition into a next phase? But he recommitted to tennis, invested in a new coach, and now he's got, he's into the top 30 for the first time, and just a career year that gives him the juice going forward. We talked about Ben Shelton, and I think what's most impressive about Shelton is he was the surprise in Australia, where nobody really knew what to expect from him. And we saw that in what happened after Australia. When he made that run in Australia, he did not win back-to-back tour-level matches until the U.S. Open, when he made it to the semifinals, getting hung up on by Djokovic, I think, like Blair said, might be the moment of the year for me. But then he wins in Tokyo, gets his first ATP title, and it looks like everything's going in the right direction. The group, age-wise, slightly ahead of them, still led by Taylor Fritz and Tommy Paul, still a lot to be expected. Let's see if we get a healthy Riley Opelka back. Let's see what we can expect from Sebastian Korda, because in many ways, Korda had, I think, the highest ceiling in the eyes of some people, but it's been a pretty uneven last 2 years for Korda, combination mostly of injuries, but also form. So I think good things for the men. And then on the women's side, with Coco Gauff leading the way, like Michelle said, Jessica Pegula had a great year. She was the only player to beat Gauff this summer. They were fantastic in the doubles. I think there's a lot of excitement from the American side. I keep using that word, but I think that it's in a good place.
No, I agree with you. Michelle, did you have any thoughts on the Americans and their prospects moving forward in the coming year?
No, I agree with Brian, so let's move on. No, I'm kidding. I do agree with everyone here about what they're saying with Ben Shelton. I think, as Blair said before, whether or not, you like or dislike Ben Shelton's demeanor, I think he's exciting to watch and he's exciting for tennis. And I think
Yes.
people are excited to see how he does after his big run from Australia last year. And I think people are excited to see if he's going to be able to keep up, his quote promise of playing so well at the U.S. Open. I think people really enjoy watching him. I think there are a lot of fans out there that really loved the phone hang up. And then there's those who are Novak fans that said, I don't think so. But I think Ben Shelton, I think the story about him being an NCAA champion, having his father, Brian Shelton, who used to play on the tour. I think people love his story. They love to root for him. I think he's a good kid. I think we're just waiting to see how he's going to respond to his 2023, which, ended up pretty nice. I mean, I know he lost to Novak, but, everyone loses to Novak, right?
Well, no, that's very well said. And, it's funny when we talked about Alcaraz, how you deal with adversity. I think it's equally interesting to watch to see how people deal with success, because it can get you out of your patterns, go to your head and be like, I don't need to listen to my coach anymore. In fact, I'm going to fire my coach. It's there. I think there's a lot of roadblocks in the way that you can find yourself in after experiencing some success. So I'm curious as to see how Ben deals with that. I have a feeling he's going to deal with it well. And I think he's got a little bit of that it factor to him when he's out there, and he loves the spotlight and the spotlight loves him. And I think he is good for tennis. And so I got high hopes for the Americans, but I'm a flag waving guy. I'm always high on the
By the way,
Americans.
quickly, Marc, Francis Tiafoe just switched his coach. Wayne Ferreira was his coach, but Blair, I know you would know this, but Diego, what's his last name?
Well, you're muted,
You're on
Blair.
mute. You're on mute, Blair.
You're muted, Blair. Sorry.
I wasn't expecting to be
Help me
brought in.
out here. Help me out here, Blair.
Diego Moyano, who of course worked with Coco, has worked with many players, many of the Americans in particular, which is perhaps fitting. I don't know. I mean, I know that it's not my time to answer yet, but I am particularly on the men's side looking forward to the Olympics race, because right now you have 4 players sandwiched between 10 and 17, and then you have Sebi Korda at 24, and Nick is Mr. Olympics, but 4 players, three.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're right on four in the race, but I believe it's only 3 to qualify in singles.
Okay.
3 per country. That's all you're allowed.
I believe so. I could be wrong.
Well, no, I'm going to defer to you on that because you are Mr. Olympics. But that's going to be, I mean, yeah, that's going to be fun to see the race, to see who qualifies for that. And then, I do love that the Olympics, and I know this is not the newest thing in the world, but I'm so old when I remember when tennis wasn't really a part of the Olympics. And I just think it's great. And the fact that it's in Paris this year, I mean, that just makes it doubly awesome. I'm really looking forward to that. All right, Nick, before I get to top moments from 2023, did you have anything you wanted to say about the Americans and where we're headed?
No, I think I'll add on to, the fact that it's huge for these American guys. We've talked about it for a long time with Opelka, Fritz, Francis Tiafoe, and Tommy Paul. But that group now, everyone's saying you include Sebi Korda, you obviously include Ben Shelton, throw in Eubanks there. And there is a pack mentality. We've all interviewed these guys in different times, different ways, different places, and they all say they're driven by each other. And they're not, that's not BS. And no. I think Ben Shelton's run really fired up those guys in a lot of ways, beating Tommy Paul, beating Francis Tiafoe. I mean, I don't think anyone saw that coming. And Brian calls out that he hadn't won consecutive matches. He caught fire and then he backed it up in Tokyo. So I think finding that motivation from each other is huge. They're realizing how they can be top 20, top 10 players. And then I'd love to see a little bit, how about Maddie Keys getting to the semifinals of the US Open and actually being
That,
points away from the
yes.
final.
Yes,
I'd
I had
love,
that circled. Yeah.
I know that she's working hard with Bjorn Fratangelo in Orlando. I think that she's had a really good offseason. So it'll be interesting to see if she can come out. We know that she's a big game player. She's got a big game. And then the likes of Sloane Stevens and Sophia Kenin too. I think that those storylines aren't maybe necessarily for us as easy to tap into because it's a roller coaster and you never know what's going to happen with Sloane. But I also thought that Sonia Kenin had a really solid 2023 and she's a Grand Slam champion, a two-time Grand Slam finalist.
Yeah.
So, and also, hello, how is Emma Navarro ranked 32nd in the world? Still unclear on that, but she will be seeded in her Australian Open debut, everyone.
Thank you for all of that. Well, I'll stay with you, Nick. And did you have a top moment from 2023 that you wanted to share? Something that stood out to you? And by the way, could be Coco, could be the Cincinnati match, could be the Wimbledon final, something we've talked about.
I mean, maybe I won't get hired at the US Open in 2024, but I did sneak down to one of those corners of Arthur Ashe Stadium to watch Coco in the final moments, which was pretty insane.
That's special. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel lucky, the work that we do. I think back to, being in Australia. Actually, okay, this is I'll go left field. My tennis moment of the year was doing a fundraiser at La Quinta in Palm Springs, and the rock star Pink, everyone, rocking a pink outfit and a pink racket and having the time of her life. Biggest tennis fan. She's a lefty. She's pretty good, y'all.
Wow.
And it was really cool to watch someone so damn famous come out and enjoy the sport. And like, she's not, she's a recreational player, and she just took to it so well. And it kind of enthused me with all this talk around paddle and pickleball, and tennis is still a sport that people can pick up. And yeah, I'd love to get Pink back involved in tennis in 2024. So that's my moment of the year. She gave me a high five, Marc. So I haven't washed this hand since.
I was gonna say that's going on my resume if that happens to me. Be like, so you worked here, and oh, you get a high five from Pink. Well, you're hired, Stern. Get in here.
I will say my favorite last anecdote is, hey, I'm Nick, meeting her the night before, and she goes, hey, Nick, I'm Alicia. I was like, wait, aren't you Pink?
Aren't you Pink?
But she only goes by she's Alicia from Philly. Forever and for always, apparently.
Oh, see, I love that. That makes me happy. That makes me very happy. Those are cool moments. I love those. Michelle, favorite moment from 2023?
I'm going to have to go back and talking about Coco Gauff. I haven't talked about Coco Gauff yet in this podcast because I'm saving it for last year. I think for seeing Serena Williams retire the year before, she came in and won her first Grand Slam title, of course. She became the first American teen to win a Grand Slam title since Serena Williams. And then to hear her make that badass speech afterwards, basically saying, all you haters who, look down at me. Nick, help me out with the quote again. It was just so inspiring to see her come out, and she had a great summer. She had won DC. She had won Cincinnati. She also won. Did she win another tournament? Or I'm confused now because my children are bothering
Michelle,
me.
for all the haters, you think that you're throwing water on my fire, but you're actually throwing gasoline on it. So thank you.
Thank you. Exactly. So for her to bow
I'm burning
out
so bright right now.
Yeah,
you see?
She is.
That's just the speech of the year for me, and it was just great to see Coco Gauff finally burst onto the stage and get that Grand Slam that she deserved. I mean, having coming on at Wimbledon a couple of years ago as a 15-year-old, had so much pressure on her, but to finally see her do it was awesome.
She is a marvel to watch, and we really are seeing her come into her own. And that's this summer was, especially after Wimbledon, she just said, okay, I'm going to break it down and build it up again. And well, you see how high she can climb. Brian, favorite moment from 2023?
Usually Blair has the market cornered on like unusual, somewhat quirky moments, but I really liked Marketa Vondrousova saying that her husband had called the cat sitter, so he was going to be able to come to London for the Wimbledon final, which she won.
Frankie the cat. I love this, Brian.
I think my New Year's resolution, before I go back to 2023, or our New Year's resolution as a group, should be to implore Blair to like catalog these Blair is this like Forrest Gump existence in tennis where she's always there for these crazy moments, whether it's, Denis Shapovalov rapping or seeing things or getting people to, one of my favorite facts you've unearthed, Blair, is how Hubert Hurkacz was a gymnast as a child, because if you look at him and how he's built, that just seems implausible.
Yeah, he's
not
soldier
know
for
that.
I
water.
asked him to do a cartwheel on camera and he declined.
Wow.
Guys.
Wow.
Duty, I
It's the first no of your career.
No
But
on the
Blair, you have
cartwheel.
a gift for drawing out these kinds of cool, fun facts. So that's our resolution for 2024. But I think the moment of the year, it really was Coco Gauff winning the U.S. Open. And like Nick said, sometimes we try to think too hard. You can't overthink this. That moment, that emotional moment where instead of her dad being in the box courtside, how he watches in a suite. So where they kind of just, where are they going to run into each other? She's running up the stairs. He's coming down. They meet in sort of the concourse area, and it's this whole family hug. And I think anybody watching that, I'm literally getting goosebumps right now just thinking about it, because anybody watching it had an emotional reaction to it. It was just awesome for somebody who is so grounded, has her head on her shoulders.
Oh, yeah.
And then when that video comes out from 11 years earlier where she's dancing at Arthur Ashe Kids Day and saying she's going to win the U.S. Open. I mean, you can't beat that. That's why we like sports. That's why we love tennis. And that's going to be a moment we're going to remember forever, I think.
No, you're right. That was
Call me maybe, baby.
Yes, exactly.
All right, Blair. Favorite moment from
Blair, no
2020?
pressure. Jeez.
I feel like Brian read me on this because
He did.
A, I have a list, and B, number one on the list is my favorite moment was the lady making bee noises behind Stefanos Tsitsipas.
I cannot.
I
forgot about that.
You could have given me a million guesses, and this is not a thing I thought I would ever see on a tennis court. Was
so
a fan, a seasoned fan, we'll call her. It's not like we're talking about a 16-year-old here, was buzzing. And then hearing Steph describe this, I believe it was Nacho Forcadell in the chair, but describing it perfectly, actually. There's and very matter of fact, not like this is something that we would never guess would happen on a tennis court. There's somebody imitating a bee behind me, and then the fan who's like pointing at her, calling her out. The whole thing was cinema. I mean, injected into my veins. I loved it so much. An honorable mention off the beaten path to Maria Sakkari, and this to me kind of like summed up the sport of tennis and how brutal it is, and also how high the mountaintops are, when she lost first round of the US Open and was in tears in the press conference, which would be my worst nightmare, by the way. I'm not a good loser, so I feel like that would happen to me often, but to be that vulnerable in front of that many people and then go on to win her first Masters 1000 title just a few weeks later in Guadalajara, to me was one of the coolest stories of the year. So
no, that is a great.
Wait, just to add in, sorry to interrupt you, Marc. The bee incident, Blair, was hysterical. And then the next day, Paula Badosa was actually in Cincinnati. She's obviously she didn't play. She was there to support Stefanos, and I actually did a sponsored suite event with her. And I asked her, I was like, "Did you talk to Stefanos about the bee incident?" And she goes, "Yeah, I asked him." Stefanos, really? Like she even was like, "Really, Stefanos, we saw bees?" So it was really funny to see his girlfriend have that same moment of reaction. That's just my 2 cents.
That is great. And I just want to point out, as you talk, Blair, about the pressure and just the awkwardness of when you have this, crushing loss. The first thing you have to do is go sit in front of a bunch of microphones and strangers ask you questions about it. It is a terrible, analogy, but I'll say it anyways. It'd be like if my girlfriend broke up with me and immediately they sat me down at a table and said, "What'd you do? Why did it go wrong? Why are you such an idiot?" Like, you just are like, "Can I please have a moment to process this? Why are you all, And that goes to sort of what Naomi Osaka was talking about, that it's, these harsh moments where you're like, I just need time to process. So, So anyways, I just want to say that. And I'll just say briefly, I can't top the funny moments that you guys all had, but I'll say my favorite moment was Carlos winning Wimbledon because it was completely unexpected to me. I was like, there's zero chance he's going to like make it to the finals, and there's no way he'll beat Novak. That to me was the most unexpected thing. My favorite match was Cincinnati because it was unbelievable, but seeing Carlos win Wimbledon, I just didn't think that was going to happen. And I love being surprised. So that was kind of cool for me. All right. We're going to wrap up here with one final question. Give me one prediction for 2024. I started with you. You were my first call, the first person I called on, Michelle. So I'm starting to lead off this last question. What's your prediction?
I'm going to make it very short and very sweet. My prediction is Jannik Sinner is going to win his first Grand Slam title in 2024.
Do you want to say which tournament? I'll leave it if you just want to say he's going to win one. But if you had one in your mind, is he going to win US, Australia?
You know what? I'm going to say he is going to win Australia.
Win Australia. Wow. That would be huge. Nick McCarvel, prediction for 2024.
Ooh, baby. You know what? I've for a long time when I've been commentating, I always pick against Novak, and not because I want to pick against him, but only because it's more fun because everyone picks Novak. But I see no signs to actually have that be an educated guess in 24. So Golden Slam, Novak Djokovic. Why not? Why not?
Why not? Why not?
It's only 34 matches, guys. So,
right. And if you're going to make a prediction, my philosophy is go big or go home. And that's, you can't, Golden Slam. Brian Clark, your prediction for 2024.
Don't know if I've made this prediction before, but I think 2024 is the year the drought ends for American men's tennis. I don't know who, but I think somebody wins a major. If I had to guess, you can see the overwhelming power of Ben Shelton find a way through as he matures and grows a little bit. You could see the athleticism of Tommy Paul. You could see kind of the well-roundedness of Taylor Fritz. I think one of those three gets it done. I don't know who and I don't know where, but that's my prediction.
Blair Henley, your prediction for 2024.
It's going to take all of my self-control to only give you one. But I am predicting that Jess Pegula, 0-6, and Andre Rublev, 0-9 in major quarters are going to make it to a major semi.
I like that. And I would love to see that. I love Rublev so much. And my heart breaks for him because he wears his heart on his sleeve. And when he loses one of those tough matches, it's just in front of everybody. It's so raw and emotional. So
that was two predictions in one, just so we're clear.
Yes. Thank you for keeping score, Nick.
So
yeah.
you guys are
no problem.
Trying to sneak one by me, Blair. All right. This was the prediction I made last year, which I know nobody remembers. I said Rafa was going to beat Carlos in the finals at French Open and then retire after that. I don't think that happened. I'm pretty sure that didn't come true, but I'm gonna kind of stick with that. Except I'm gonna say, and so this is gonna go head to head against you, Nick. Rafa's gonna win the French Open, and then he and Carlos are gonna win the gold medal in doubles in Paris later that summer. So I'm
wow, that's big.
Yeah, well, go big or go home. Come on, that's how we do it here. And like you, Blair, I snuck in two predictions with one, so thank you for showing me the way on that. I cannot thank all of you enough. It is so much fun catching up with you all year long. You guys are just the best. And this that we do today is, as I said, my favorite time of the year. But I love the preview show we do of the US Open. I can't wait to be back there. Hopefully I'll be back there and see all of you again. But I just wish nothing but the best for you all through the holidays and nothing but the best for the coming year. Thank you to each and every one of you for everything you do, and particularly for coming on and doing this with me today. You guys are the best.
Thank
Thanks,
you, Marc.
Marc.
Happy holidays,
appreciate it.
everyone.
Happy holidays, everybody. Thank you, Marc.